Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. I'm Carolyn, and I'm a member here, and I'm really happy to be here. And I'm pretending the sun's shining. Thankful for the weather, right? For the warmth. This is a place that we seek to offer warmth, generosity, nourishment, and care.
No, you don't get my script.
Oh, I liked her script. Let's take a vote.
You have to say this stuff.
But these words are beautiful.
Well, we'll get there.
Okay, now that you guys are awake and alert,
You tell them that.
all I get is this. All right, welcome. That was not planned. I'm sorry. Oh, gosh. Anyway, welcome to you all present. Welcome to you all that are on social media, that are listening to us via whatever that's called out there. When I was sick and at home, I actually tuned in, and what an experience that is. So, welcome, everyone. Don't forget your cell phones. Take them out, silence them now. A reminder that we have exits in the back. There are two. There is one on each side up here. Has anyone brought visitors with them this morning? No one. Yes, good.
Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Okay. How about visitors who came bravely by themselves? Yes, there's someone in the back.
We actually went here like 20 years ago, but we're in the military, and so we've been traveling the world and seen grandchildren. And we managed to visit UUs in California and Virginia, but many of the countries we've been to don't have UUs. So we watched on the internet, but we're back, and see, this is our first day back here. And I know nobody remembers this. This is like 20 years ago. But we're glad to be back. And I don't recognize anybody here.
Wait, would you tell us your names, please?
Sheila Lilico.
Jesse and Sheila Lilico. Okay.
Gordon and Donna.
Great. I'm so glad you're back.
Welcome back.
So, did you utilize CLF when you were abroad?
I'm sorry.
Church of the Larger Fellowship? Did you?
Yes. For the most part, we just didn't go to church actually.
Aw.
Because, well, in other countries, it's very different, and sometimes you don't know what they're even talking about because they're in their own language. So it's
The nerve.
you don't know what they're
Yeah.
saying.
In Europe, there's a very strong European UU in many of the different countries, and then twice a year they get together for retreats. So that sustained me. But
In Europe, it's like the last few years we were Egypt.
oh wow,
So, and we're not very good with the Arabic language. So there's very little we use here. But, anyway, we're retired and we're back and we're living back here again. So
we look forward to you being some more sustaining members in this congregation. Yeah. Okay. That brings to mind that we have a luncheon today, and guests are most welcome to join us without paying anything. And I hope you all can join us and begin to share more and get reacquainted. Do we have other visitors this morning? Okay. I think that's it, unless I grab Kendyl's again. Thank you for being here. How embarrassing.
Indeed, good morning and welcome. Welcome to this gathering of the covenant community of memory and promise. To this place seeking to offer warmth, generosity, nourishment, and care to one another and to those around us, most especially those in need. This week, we had the opportunity to give very tangible form to that aspiration by offering a place of warm shelter for our homeless neighbors during the 2 nights of the polar vortex with its lethal cold. Hang on, I'm not done. It was only 2 nights, but it stretched our resources, our capacities, our acceptance and understanding. Many of our members and others helped to make that brief outreach possible. Would you stand if you were one of them? I know you're out there, come on. Thank you. You touch my heart and make me proud to serve this congregation. I am grateful to each and every one of you. Many of our local neighbors and other compassionate hearts also gave time and food and acts of care to those who sheltered here, and it was good to be with them as well. It is important to keep in mind that we did not solve any long-term problems. We only kept death at bay for a couple of nights. And while that is something to be glad of, so much more need remains. As we gather today in reflection, gratitude, and renewal, many questions occur, and many learnings are yet to be shared. But we know this: our mission called to us and we answered, awkwardly, naively, but in faith, out of a covenant of goodwill and service. This is how we grow and learn as a community, by putting ourselves on the line for what we say we believe in. This is how we give our values flesh in the world and build beloved community here in our corner of Kansas City, by doing what we can with what we have when we are called. May our gathering here in worship renew our minds and hearts and spirits, so that we may ever more faithfully put our values into practice and measure the worth of our creeds by the impact of our deeds. We kindle this chalice flame as a symbol of the light and warmth that we seek and that we would share, as a beacon to guide our journey together toward the world we envision, a place of abundance, justice, and freedom, a time of wholeness for all people, of rejoicing and of peace.
Hello, my name is Savannah, and I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Thank you, Savannah. Now let us rise in body or spirit as we are able and speak once again the words of our... No, you're going to light it, right? And just leave it lit, okay? And while she does that, we're going to speak the words of our community's promise to one another. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Let's remain risen as we sing our opening hymn.
To be on.
It's on. Let them
Oh, there. That's better. Okay. Good morning. I'm Evelyn Maddox, and Reverend Gibbons asked me to conduct the children's conversation this morning because she knows I'm a active member of the League of Women Voters, and we work very hard to register people and to protect voters' rights. So she thought it was right that I might this morning talk with the kids about democracy and elections and voting and how important it is. The results of votes and elections is so important to all of us, and particularly to children. I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. But first, we're going to see a video about an election that occurred last November. And so we'll watch that video, and then we'll talk a little bit about it, okay? After the video.
We the people. We the people.
We the people.
We the people.
Okay, now what we saw were women being installed in the United States Congress. And did you notice there were all women and no men in that video? Wasn't that great? Can't help it. You know, there was a time when women could not even vote. And in fact, it was 99 years ago when women first got to vote. So that means your great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, could not vote until 1920. That was a long time before you and I were born, but still, before 1920, the only way a woman had any say in what happened in her government, in her town, or in the United States was if just maybe she could influence a husband or a friend to her way of thinking. So we're very, very happy to celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's vote next year in 1920. Now, voting, we vote in these United States of America because we're a democracy. Can anybody here tell me what a democracy is? You were first. Let's hear from you.
Organized way of voting. Oh, it's an organized way of voting.
Well, that's very true. There's something else about it. We've got two more.
It's a way of people that select a official to like do all the important stuff, basically.
And how do they select that official?
By voting.
Yes, that's true. Do we have something more to add over here? I think he stole your line, didn't he? Yes, that's true. We vote, and when we vote, that organized way of voting is called an election. So this morning, we're going to practice voting in our own election, okay? So I'm going to tell you about our own election in a minute, but first, I want to tell you in the real world, in these United States of America, which is a democracy, in April, we'll elect some officials, at least adults who are 17 and a half years old and at least 18 to vote. People who are 18 and get registered first can go vote if they're a citizen, and they'll vote on the election of a mayor. And city council members will have some issues. One on the ballot is, shall we have a pre-kindergarten school program across the city? So, as you said, very important voting coming up on April 2nd. And you know those officials that get elected? You know what matters to you about those officials? Well, those officials are the ones that decide what happens in your schools. At least in April and in November, when we have statewide elections, different, the city of Kansas City, Jackson County, the state of Missouri, and the United States. We'll have all four different kinds of elections. And the one we had last November when these women were elected, and a little more, 100 years ago, they couldn't even serve in Congress. They couldn't even vote, but now they can. We're very happy to have so many elected. In any event, for you personally, what happens in your schools will depend upon which officials get elected. They'll decide whether we have sports programs in our high schools. How would you like that if there were no football teams or basketball teams or soccer, volleyball? Yes. Also, what if there were no computers in schools? Because they're going to decide that. That would be bad. Yes. Yeah. And what's that?
And we would never learn again on computers.
Sorry, can somebody tell me what she said? Yes.
We would never learn again about computer games.
That's true. It could be true. It's very important that we have computers in schools. But even when we're not in school, another thing the government does is it makes sure our food is safe. When we go to the grocery store and we buy food, we know it's not going to make us sick, because the government has a program in place where we have people who inspect foods. The city has people inspect restaurants so we won't get sick. But what they do is very dependent upon the officials that get elected. And then finally, the really important one that I have not yet mentioned is it's our government. Every level, the city, the county government, the state government, and the United States government, they decide, we decide how much will help the poor. So they decide how much will help the poor by giving them the means to get food to eat, to pay the rent where they live, and also to go to the doctor or to the hospital if they need to. That's really important, isn't it? So people who vote in real elections have a lot to think about when they vote for officials or issues like the pre-kindergarten issue. So this morning we're going to practice, okay? We're going to practice voting. So that we're going to pretend we're a country right now, okay? So we need the name of our country, just everybody sitting on the floor. Nobody else, none of those people. Does somebody have a suggestion for the name of our little country? Okay, you two talk. Let's let somebody else. Oh, did you talk? Yeah. No, you have to talk.
Candytopia, based on the candy on the bags behind.
That's pretty good. She likes it. What are you other people? I think that's pretty good. We are the country of Candytopia. And so this means that everybody here, you're citizens of our pretend country. And I'm going to give everybody a ballot. And would our election judge help me distribute the ballots? Yes. We have an election judge. It's his job. Our election judge's job is to make sure everybody gets a ballot. You go over there and I'll go over here. Now, election judge, make sure everybody just gets one ballot. Yes. Okay. Here you go. Are you a citizen of Candytopia? All right. Okay. Sorry. You gotta live here. Okay. You can have one. Oh, yes. Would you please? Yes. Thank you. Oh, well, we'll get, sorry, that's not good. And we'll get one. We've got more over here. Beth, she didn't get one. Thank you. One more over there. Well, what is this? Do you have another one that make sure it says ballot on it? Because these are called ballots. Well, she did.
Oh, you got those blanks.
Okay. Now, Mr. Election Judge, who happens to be, his name is Bill, and I didn't introduce myself. You could call me Evelyn, or you could call me Ms. Maddox, okay? Either way, if you need to talk to me. Bill, Mr. Election Judge, if you'll go stand behind the sacks, because we are about ready to vote. So in order to vote, just like on a real election, you have to line up. So come over here. It doesn't matter who's first. Okay, let's get more in a line. Go back over to the wall and line up there. Make sure you have your ballot. Okay. Now, if you're a boy in the line, would you please hold up your hand? Oh my gosh, got a lot of boys. Now, girls, how would we like it if we just let the boys vote? We wouldn't like that at all. So that's why the law got changed back in 1920, because otherwise we wouldn't get to vote. Okay, so now, Mr. Election Judge, you mix up those sacks and turn them around. So the other, do some sort of switching. Yes, we're going to do a big switch here. We don't know what's going to land up there, right? So our voters now will just walk up and go up where the election judge is. Now, just a minute here, because voting is always private. Why would it be private? Yes, you.
Because if everyone got to see what other people vote, then they might do the same thing.
You are exactly right. If people thought everybody else was voting for one thing, like the Tootsie Pops, then that voter might also vote for Tootsie Pops. Or if their best friend, if they see what their best friend votes for. Yes, we have another comment.
You haven't actually told us what we're voting for.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, well, this makes it more like a real election. So, all right. So we're just about ready. Well, we did start. So, but we have one question, and then we'll get started.
Women being able to vote is actually all thanks to the work of Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
You are right. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is really a shero for women, and a lot of others. It took 70 years for women to work for the vote. They marched in the streets. Okay, madam, are you a citizen of Candytopia? Oh, you may vote. So go back. You go ahead and vote. Now, okay, but don't hold it up. So, all right, yes. Oh, their choices are they're voting for either 2 Tootsie Pops or 1 Twix. So when they put their vote in the sack for Twix, they're voting for Twix. Are you hearing that? Put your vote in the sack for the Pops, Tootsie Pops, you're voting for that. Yes. Okay, so let's hurry, kids. Got a lot of people to vote today. And you can get ready. And you go ahead. Yes, thank you. You get out. And we need a couple of counting people. Carolyn and Kendall, would you be able to take 1 sack and count it as soon as we're done?
Do we get paid to do this?
Oh, no. No. Yes.
Fun fact, just a couple days ago, I became a resident of Candytopia. I used to be a resident of Shaggytopia.
Okay, all right. Okay, and you go ahead, sir. Okay. Lots of voters this morning. That's good. This is called a turnout. When you actually vote, that's called a... Uh-oh, wait a minute. I don't see your ballot. Do you have a ballot?
I got a blank one.
Oh, no. Are you a resident of Candytopia?
I'm just immigrated.
Well, but I think you haven't registered yet, because if you had registered, I would have given you a ballot. So I'm sorry, you cannot vote. Okay?
Oh, deserves a vote.
Yeah, we're going to get a count in just a minute. But what about that? Now you know sort of what your teachers, your friends, your neighbors, your aunts and uncles, parents, grandparents.
All right, it's 8 for the Twix and 14 for the Pops.
All right, the Pops win. So everybody is going to get the Pops, because that's the deal in voting. Whoever wins, the majority in a democracy's vote applies to everybody. So everybody gets the Pops. And I'm sorry, I didn't say that earlier. All right, so thank you very much for voting. Judith will have your Pops to give to you later. Okay?
And we're going to depart to your classes with song.
Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
Good morning. Imagine what our faith would look like if we upheld and centered the history, the perspectives, the voices, and the leadership of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists. Formed in the summer of 2015, the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, or BLUE, organization grew out of the broader movement for Black lives. In many ways, the origins of BLUE date back to the 1970s, when many Black UUs left our faith in the wake of unfulfilled promises made by the association during what became known at the time as the Black Empowerment Controversy. BLUE is an independent network which provides ministry for and by Black Unitarian Universalists, while also moving to expand the role and visibility of Black UUs within our faith. It works with hundreds of self-identified Black UUs around the country to design and proclaim how they envision their faith now and in the future. During its initial convening, it became clear that many Black UUs experience a sense of isolation in our congregations. This network provides an additional opportunity for Black UUs to connect with other Black UUs across the country for a spiritual uplift that may not otherwise be available in their home congregations. This has fostered intentional, deeper connections among Black UUs and generated deliberate and concerted organizing efforts to create authentic linking, not only of Unitarian Universalist resources with Black liberation movement spaces, but also of Unitarian Universalism as a faith, with our endeavor to be who we say we want to be in the world. Directly addressing the assumption that we are a white faith, confirming the presence, the voices, and the perspectives of Black UUs are critical to countering the impact of anti-Blackness. BLUE brings us together so that we as a faith may move toward more wholeness. We have the opportunity to take the lead as a faith denomination in addressing our history of upholding white supremacy. Together, we can collectively work to dismantle it and amend a long broken promise to the Black lives within our association. Our congregation can do something different in this extraordinary moment to connect our finances with our theological values as we enter a new chapter within our faith. A financial commitment in support of the work of Black Lives Universalists, Unitarian Universalists, is transformational and inspirational. Any congregation which meets the threshold of $10 per member will have their contribution doubled by a matching challenge. All Souls met that threshold last year. Now is our opportunity to increase the value of our contributions to be matched. This is our time to be bold, radical, and transformational as we commit to mature, radically inclusive, justice-centered, multiracial, and multi-generational religious faith. On this first Sunday of Black History Month, in vision and hope, this morning's offering in support of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism will now be given and gratefully received.
Will you join me in the words of dedication for our offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
This is taken from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer. She fell like a maple seed, pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in the sky world, marking her path. It took her a long time to fall. In fear, maybe in hope, she clutched a bundle tightly in her hand. Hurtling downward, she saw only dark water below. But in that emptiness, there were many eyes gazing up at the sudden shaft of light. They could see it was a woman spiraling toward them. The geese nodded at one another and rose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath her to break her fall. Soft feathers gently carried her downward, but the geese could not hold the woman above the water for long. The animals called a council to decide what to do. She watched them gather: loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest on. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. The others understood that she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers offered to search for mud at the bottom of the water. The strongest of them tried one by one and failed. Finally, little muskrat volunteered, and he was gone for a very long time. As they waited and waited, a stream of bubbles rose, and then the limp, lifeless body of muskrat with a small scoop of mud clutched in his paw.
Turtle said to place the dab of mud on his back. When Sky Woman had spread it over his shell with her hands, she made a Thanksgiving song and began to dance. As her feet caressed the earth, the land grew and grew until the whole earth was made through all the animals' gifts combined with their gratitude. Together they formed what we know today as Turtle Island, the continent that is our home. Sky Woman had not arrived empty-handed. Clutched to her hand as she fell was a bundle containing fruits and seeds of all kinds of plants. These she placed in the new ground and carefully tended until the earth turned from brown to green. Sunlight streamed down from the hole in Sky World so that seeds could sprout and all the plants could flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines grew everywhere. The animals had plenty to eat, and many of them came to live with the woman on Turtle Island.
It is good to remember that the original woman was herself an immigrant. She fell a long way from her home in the sky world, leaving behind all who knew her and who held her dear. She could never go back. She came here with nothing but a handful of seeds and the slimmest instructions to, quote, use your gifts and dreams for good, the same instructions we all carry. She accepted the gifts from the other beings with open hands and used them honorably. She shared the gifts she brought from Sky World as she set herself about the business of flourishing and making a home. It is also good to recall that when Sky Woman arrived here, she did not come alone. She was pregnant. Knowing her grandchildren would inherit the world she left behind, she did not work for flourishing in her time only. It was through her actions of reciprocity, the give and take with the land, that the original immigrants became indigenous. For all of us, becoming indigenous to a place means living as if your children's future mattered, to take care of the land as if our lives, both material and spiritual, depended on it.
Let's review, shall we? Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020 will be 100 years and 1 day since Tuesday, November 2nd, 1920, the day of the first federal election in which all female citizens of the United States were entitled to cast ballots. Any year that starts with 19 is beginning to sound like a long time ago to me. But the truth is that until that election day, 2 long or eventful, or both, years from now, it has not been 100 years since women even had the franchise. And most of us in this room will not live to see the day in 2064 when women have been voting for even half of the history of this nation. Another bit of math, if I may. The same kind of calculations show that on Election Day 1964, the Black citizens of the United States had been eligible to vote for exactly half of the country's history. And yet it was not until the passage of the Federal Voting Rights Act the following year, in 1965, that as many as half of the eligible Black voters across the nation were registered, let alone permitted to actually cast a ballot. White men had quite a long time in which to construct a legislative playing field that favored the inertia of their privilege. And it is facetious to claim that we have yet arrived at a point where anything truly level has since been achieved. And yet I submit that any degree of progress is not to be despised. According to Politico.com, in the 2018 general elections, there was a wave of firsts elected to the United States House of Representatives for the 116th Congress. A record-breaking 103 women have been elected or re-elected into the United States House of Representatives, and 42 of them are joining Congress for the first time. Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib became the first Muslim women ever elected to either House of Congress, with Tlaib, the first Palestinian American woman, and Omar, the first Somali American of either gender, to be elected to Congress. Also in this election, Angie Craig became the first lesbian mother to be elected to Congress. Sharice Davids became the first lesbian Native American elected to the House of Representatives, along with Deb Haaland, the first two Native American women elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became the youngest woman to be elected to either House of Congress. The 116th Congress is also on track to be one of the most diverse yet. There are 24 people of color in the freshman class, and many of them will be representing mostly white districts. Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey, will be the first Korean American in Congress in 20 years. While all these shifts appear to me to be cause for celebration, it should be acknowledged that both legislative houses continue to consist in the majority of white men who do not reflect the overall demographics of American citizens in gender, race, sexual identity, physical ability, or economic status. We have taken a step in the right direction, but we have quite a long way yet to go. So the question arises, why does it matter, this advent of women and of various marginalized identities in our nation's highest deliberative body? And with that, a companion question. What is it that we expect from these new representatives? I would like to propose, first of all, that the difference that women and other people with historically marginalized identities make in representative and leadership roles, like congressional office, is not by virtue of their inherent virtue. I believe that women as a group and as individuals can be just as greedy and selfish as men as a group and as individuals. There may be some moments in life when female hormones drive toward affiliation and male hormones drive toward aggression, but either of these directions can lead to collective mistakes, which is why a balance might be most helpful in an all other things being equal scenario. However, as I have just reviewed, we 21st century Americans do not live in that scenario or anything really like it. Which is in part why the story of Sky Woman falling into the embrace of the creatures to create Turtle Island is one we would do well to remember. It is the culture of toxic masculine aggression and privilege that needs to be challenged, not the existence of masculinity in itself. But a creation story in which a male god creates a male human with woman as a subservient afterthought, and then charges humanity to rule and subdue everything else, calls into being a certain kind of social structure and a certain set of default assumptions about the superiority of maleness. Western European culture has been informed by those assumptions, at least since it adopted the scripture traditions of Judaism and Christianity, or perhaps since the invention of agriculture, cities, and iron weapons. Either way, it has been quite a long while. And so it seems to me that whatever essential differences between male and female leadership may or may not exist, there are certainly culturally created differences to be observed, two of which are worth our attention this morning. The first of these is that for either a person of color or a woman to win a popular election is to change the default narrative of white male privilege. It is a deviation from the expected, something to notice, as we are doing right now. Whether or not that successful candidate goes on to accomplish anything of significance while in office, the very fact of their victory subverts the paradigm of dominance and implies the potential for other kinds of changes to follow. If there can be a woman senator, a Native American congressperson, a lesbian mother, a Muslim, a Somali American, then what else becomes thinkable? When a photograph of the House of Representatives shows a variety of genders and a diversity of complexions, it is proof that something different is going on. This is not your father's Congress. The inertia of privilege does not always prevail. It can be overcome. You have to be able to imagine a new order before you can prepare to start living into it. These new members of the House, just by being who they are, where they are, exist as a promise and a prophecy that America does have before it the possibility of a greatness that it has never yet experienced, that we could choose yet again to shed the constraints of outdated assumptions and live into a more authentic equality. That image of a new Congress will make some people cling ever more fearfully to a way of being in the world that is dying and deserves to die, which means there will be conflict and confusion and pain and tragedy ahead of us, no doubt. But for some of us, that image creates a hunger for the new way that we have not yet seen but can almost taste. We do not yet know the exact shape of it, and we do not yet know what it will demand of us here on the threshold. What sacrifice of privilege and comfort, what wrenching change in our unreflective patterns of thought, what reconsideration of what we have always held as true and always thought we knew. It is no occasion for complacency, of that I am sure. The wild bells of a new era are calling us, says Tennyson, not to certain victory, but to adventure and new possibility. Ring out my mournful rhymes, he says, but ring the fuller minstrel in. Our old assurances, with all their comfort, must be given up if we are to ring in a new era. The other difference I see as women move into power and leadership as a cohort rather than outstanding individual exceptions is the shift from the vision of heroic personal achievement to the work of co-creation. Sky Woman does not fall into the world and start arbitrarily creating stuff. She works with the creatures who find her to make a livable space for herself and all the others, giving thanks for their gifts and using them with respect. The older I get, the more I learn that little, if anything, has ever actually been accomplished by lone heroes, rejecting both the constraints and the assistance of community. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was embedded in a community. Rather, resistance to injustice is always a collective effort, a function of gathering and organizing and experimenting and trying again until a critical moment comes when energy and memory and resources and trust are where they need to be in order for transformation to ring out. which is not to say that women don't have egos or don't want to be at center stage. We absolutely do. But we have also learned from long and hard lessons in this culture how essential it is to lay groundwork and to stay connected and accountable to others. I am cautiously hopeful that this is an artifact of the struggle against privilege that we may carry with us into new roles of power. Women surely know that we will not create a place at the table of decision-making by our own heroic selves without help. And I urge us not to forget the importance of co-creation once we have arrived at that place. Of course, there is nothing to stop other legislators, including men, from laying this lesson to heart as well. Nothing but the inertia of success, if the heroic model has always worked for them and reflects the way that the world is actually structured in their minds. But I suspect that one of the many charming things about Barack Obama, for instance, was that he learned the fragility of individual heroism early in his work as a community organizer. And even though he was routinely cast in that role of uniquely exceptional super person, he never forgot that he actually represented the combined efforts of a coalition. It's not quite the same thing as personal modesty as opposed to arrogance, though it sometimes gets described that way. But it is a quality of leadership that is not inherently limited to any particular gender. In fact, there are progressive men, including white men, in the new Congress too, and that is as it should be. We need their creativity and dedication too. We need them to leverage their privilege and their access to the workings of power to make a difference along with their colleagues. If they listen, they too can hear the bells of change. Alfred Lord Tennyson described these in his 1850 elegy. Inspired by the English tradition of rural churches with sets of bells to ring elaborate patterns called changes to signal midnight on New Year's Eve, much as New Yorkers now watch the lighted ball drop from the flagpole in Times Square. The poet and his sister were grieving the death of her fiancé and his good friend. And Tennyson makes the connection between accepting loss and the end of the old order for the sake of the new and better world that might then become possible. I wish I could read this poem to all my sisters and friends who are now at work in our nation's capital, who give me such renewed hope. I wish I could share it with all those there whose decisions will shape the good or evil of our country over the next 2 years and beyond. So many of its lines resound with utterly fresh relevance in the face of our present challenges. Instead, I share it with you, dearly beloved, because all of us must gather hope and courage to go forward, to leave the comforts of the past if they stand in the way of greater justice, equality, and freedom from bondage. I want to let you know that I have edited just a bit so that the gendered theological language of the 19th century does not get in our way. And I want to give you some time at the end of each verse to think about how these lines reflect our present as well as past struggles. You must picture the poet on a cold, windy, moonlit winter night, hearing the clang of the church bells across the sky, tolling out the old year and announcing the new. Ring out, wild bells, to the wild, wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out, wild bells, and let him die. Ring out the old, ring in the new, ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let him go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring out the grief that saps the mind. For those that here we see no more. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Ring in redress to humankind. Ring out a slowly dying cause and ancient forms of party strife. Ring in the nobler modes of life with sweeter manners, purer laws. Ring out the want, the care, the sin, the faithless coldness of the times. Ring out my mournful rhymes, but bring the fuller minstrel in. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Ring out old shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust of gold. Ring out the 1,000 wars of old. Ring in the 1,000 years of peace. Ring in the valiant soul and free, the larger heart, the kindlier hand. Ring out the darkness of the land. Ring in the good that is to be. There is change in the winds, my friends. New faces, new hands to shape the dawning future, the good and the bad. Bless them as they go about this work, O bells. Call them to courage and candor, to integrity and insight. Ring in them as a summons to let go of what must pass away so that our visions of a better world may come to be. Ring in all of us, in our minds and hearts, in our spirits and our bones, so that we may follow leaders of vision and honesty, so that we may give them our support and have their backs in the upheavals that lie before us all. Ring out and call us ourselves to leadership in our times, to be valiant souls in the service of the common good, the good that is to be. Ring out and let us reply to your call with song.
Ring out wild bells to the wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out wild bells and let it die. Ring out the old, ring in the new. Ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let it go. Bring out the false, bring in the true. Bring out the grief that saps the mind. For those that hear, we see no more. Bring out the feud of rich and poor. Bring in redress to humankind. Bring out false pride in peace and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Bring in the truth of truth and right. Bring in the common love of good.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. People say, said Dorothy Day, what is the sense of our small effort? They do not see that we must lay one brick at a time, one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has the right to sit down and feel hopeless. There is too much work to do.
Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet shall be, the